administrator, and this is the last of our four-part series. Uh, Brought to you by Kentucky Autism Training Center. And thank you for everybody that has participated. I know a lot of you all have attended all four of these. I see some familiar names today, so thank you. We have been very excited about the trainings that have been presented this month, and we will be bringing a fall series as well in September. So we will be sending the flyer out for that probably around August, if not late July. So, some housekeeping tips today. Please make sure you're on mute. If you do have any questions for our presenter, please put them in the chat. And if we have time, I will ask him those questions. We did put the link to today's PowerPoint presentation and the resources in the chat for you all. At the end of the presentation, I will put a link also to a survey. Please complete that. You will need to click that this was the Aetna presentation so that it will prompt you to put your name and email, and so that a certificate, CEUs, can be sent to you. So, without further ado, I do want to present Mike Miller, who is a field training coordinator with KATC, and he is here to talk about autism research, services, and more.
You can calm them down pretty quick.
Mike, you are on mute.
Let's start again. Good afternoon. I'm Mike Miller, and I'm with the University of Louisville. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. I'm Mike Miller with the University of Louisville, Kentucky Autism Training Center, better known as KATC. I graduated from Murray State University with a Bachelor of Science and a Master of Arts and a 30 above in school administration. I served in a classroom of special education teacher in middle and high school settings and held administrative positions and a director of special education and worked at the Kentucky Department of Education. I came to the University of Louisville in 2014, and I work with families and caregivers in navigating resources. I'll be using the term parent and caregiver interchangeably unless otherwise noted. I currently am working with 12 autistic students that are primarily engineering students here at the University of Louisville as a mentor. Okay. Michelle. Oh, can everyone see the next slide?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Have a little technology difficulty this morning. In our office, we have 8 individuals. Dr. Larry Taylor is our executive director. Heidi Cooley Cook is our assistant director. Michelle Bush is our program coordinator, and she's basically is the glue in our office of making sure we're at where we're supposed to be and what's happening next. So we couldn't do without Michelle. And I'm Mike Miller. And then they have the next 4 people are field training consultants that work only in the schools. And they are Kim Howard, and she works in the eastern part of the state. Enid Hurtidu is the field training coordinator, and she serves Northern Kentucky and some of, I guess, South Central. And then Heather Alger works in Central and Eastern and Northeastern part of Kentucky, and Tracy Belfield works in the northern part of the state. I mean, western part of the state. I should know better. That's the part I'm from.
No, get down.
The KATC website is what I'm going to go to next. And in our website, we have done some updating on this, and we're not completely through with everything that we're wanting to do. We're hoping to make it easier for you to navigate through, to be able to understand what we have for families. If you'd like to join our listserv, you can send a message to our office and follow the instructions on the sheet. Or you can find more details about professional development trainings. Register on our public trainings, such as ADOS-2, which is an evaluation tool for diagnosis, Autism and Parent Summits, and request yellow dot brochures. We have created through the website updates, which is the first is information for families, resources for families, information for all ages, children, and adolescents and adults. And the adolescent and adults, we'll start with that. It gives you program provider list of providers that serve individuals that are autistic adults, or adolescents or adults that are 18 or above. And then we have children lists that provide providers, friendly child care centers, and step-to-step to what to do with you diagnosed. We have a child with a new diagnosis. Then information for all ages. We have the Kentucky Provider Directory that's provided by the Kentucky Cabinet for Health and Family Services, your community mental health centers, and regional university-based multidisciplinary evaluation centers. Your community mental health centers, I have to tell you, has to be one of the biggest friends that you become acquainted with, because they are a resource that can help you getting services, case management, and be able to kind of guide you into what you need to be doing to have more success with your child. Okay, next. The data on this is incorrect. When I made the slide, it changed in between it, where it gives you the prevalence rate, which says 1 in 44. And in the chat, Heidi has been gracious enough to put a slide in there. It's 1 in 36 now that have been diagnosed with autism in the U.S. An overview of autism spectrum disorder. There's a triad of characteristics: social interaction, communication, restricted repetitive behaviors. You look at those triads, and if you are basically 2 of those 3, it's a good chance you're going to have a diagnosis of autism. The effects of individuals' life is from the home, the school, and the community. And through research, it looks at us that, like, you're providing those services from the home, we'll go out to the school and the community. And one of the things that we look at is, if you know one person with autism, you know one person. Now, there are some things that are fine lines that individuals have that kind of are common threads. Like, a lot of my kids love to eat McNuggets. Some of them like it with breading, some like it without the breading. Some people, they have such certain traditions of what they eat, but having a healthy diet is going to be very important for this individual, because it makes the person be able to be healthy, and they're working now to gain these strengths of, whether it's communication, whether it's behavior, or whatever the incidents may be that they need to be working on. Evidence-based practices are the things that we look at, because they are evidence-based, they're research-based, and they give good information to say that they could be important in making your child to have success. And like augmented and alternative communication. What your child has learned PECS, which is a picture exchange communication system. Then you could go to an augmentative communication device, and with that device, once you keep using the device, which the child will then put their finger on the picture of, like, say they want a fruit, they put apple, and it says apple, and then they practice saying the word a couple of times, and it will increase that language. And then they're also putting what the item is with the word. And so it is a great strategy of getting communication. The thing, whether you have a verbal communication or not, the important thing is that every child has a communication system. And because sometimes I have families come in and they'll say, we need to work on behavior. Well, until we get that communication system in place, we're still going to have behaviors. I'm not saying that we can't work on those behaviors, but we've got to also make sure we got that communication system as a priority. There's a lot of these. If you have different questions on those, feel free to ask me an email or what or any method it would be possible to talk about any of these areas of evidence-based practices. Statewide supports. The University of Louisville Autism Center is now the Norton's Autism Center, but you can still use this link, which is www.uoflautism.org, and it will still go to the Norton page. Then the Kentucky Department of Education, which has information about guidance document for autism. Then you have Kentucky First Steps, which is the infants to age 3. You age out at age 3 and then go to preschool, and then preschool and into the regular school system. Another important one, which I use all the time, is 211, which it's not in all the areas of the state, but it's expanding. I think it's going in part of Western Kentucky now, and I think it's also going in some of Eastern Kentucky. And it's 211. And you can call this number and say, I'd like to know an occupational therapist that works with an individual that has autism, age 13, in my area. And they'll come back and they'll give you information. If there's not the information, they'll say we don't see any in this area, but they will give you that information. And I've never been told something that you couldn't get, at least to be close, or an area that you could drive to get that service, but close as you can to your home. And then we have the Office of Autism, which is a office of one, but
check
they
on
still
there later and see if you've got it uploaded. But yeah, you can go ahead and give me your.
So the Office of Autism works with or overseeing what statewide networks that we use together with collaboration and also with training. Another important area that I don't have listed on my statewide supports is 988, which is mental health. And in mental health, I want those individuals to be able to have a resource in case of self-injury or harm to themselves, and that's a way that they can get help by calling it 988 number. Overview of online web-based supports. The Center for Disease Control has autism case trainings that you can go to, and I have the links there. Then the CDC, which is Act Early, which kind of is a very beneficial factor for a lot of my families, because when they go into the having a diagnosis, and it's talking about the developmental milestones, and those developmental milestones are very important to be able to kind of measure where your child may be. And so it gives you what they should be doing by age 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, and on up, to be able to give you that kind of a ballpark figure to go through to see where they may be developmentally delayed in. Then there's the National Professional Development Center on Autism Spectrum Disorders. And the National Professional Autism Center for Autism Spectrum Disorders is a great resource to get materials and look at trainings that you might be beneficial for you. The Marcus Center, which is at Atlanta, is with Embry University, and they do basically research at that center. And then Ocali, which is Ohio Center for Autism and Low Incidence, is a training center in Columbus, Ohio, and they provide trainings. They have a conference in November. They have internet modules that you could use, and they have autism certification centers for individuals. So they provide a lot of great information for families. Then we're going to talk a little bit about community-based versus school-based. You go into school sometimes and they'll say, you're looking at having an individual education program. And if the disability or the challenge that the child has does not affect their mode of learning, then they may not get a school diagnosis of autism, but they may have a medical diagnosis of autism. And both of those are important. The thing about it is, like, a lot of my parents will come in and they're very upset because they got a developmental delayed diagnosis as they enter kindergarten. I'm not really opposed to that, because I like, really, when you go do a diagnosis, I like for you to have a multidisciplinary evaluation With that evaluation, then you can see, is there maybe something else that's causing the challenges, and it may not be autism. So I don't want to give a diagnosis to a young child that may not be something that they really are affected with. They can still have an IEP with a developmental delay, get the same services you would with an autism diagnosis. And then at age 9, they have to give a diagnosis of something for that student beside the DD, because that goes away at age 9. Outside services sometimes are very beneficial for students, because you may not get, like if you have a non-speaking individual, then they may need more speech and services, and to be able to get that outside. I'm going to talk a little bit more about those services in just a minute. Outside providers are not often invited into schools for provide intervention services. And so that makes it difficult for families, I know, sometimes to get appointments after school, or they have to take their child out of school to get the services. And the services are provided in the school, and the district's responsibility and liability could be a factor. Some school districts may contract with providers if they do not have someone on their staff that can provide that service that's needed in the individual education program. So the medical diagnosis proves to be very important later on in life, because once they exit school, then that IEP is no longer effective. But you need a medical diagnosis for other areas, because under the Office of Civil Rights, you do have the ability for accommodations for you as an adult. All right, we'll talk a little bit about overview of frequently recommended interventions. Speech therapy, which I talked about earlier, are the AAC devices, which is augmentative communication devices for speech, which is evidence-based practice. Then you got occupational therapy that gives that fine motor skills of buttoning your shirt, using your hands that you need to do with fine motor activity. Feeding therapy is also provided by occupational therapists, because we have a lot of individuals that do not have a good, feeding system that they've got in place. And it's hard for parents sometimes to figure out. One of the things I do recommend is give this food to a child and let them try it. If they spit it out, then don't force it. Don't force that on them. But one day you're going to find things that they like that you may not suspect. Physical therapy, that would be for any type of or orthopedic type services that you might need. Counseling, which I find is very important, because it also helps that child understand what's going on and how to deal with those systems in their daily life. Psychiatry, they do a great job with medicine management. If you have a child that does need medication, I'm not saying every child needs medication, but if there is effective for that individual, then I would definitely want for you to see a psychiatry. And neurology, there's a lot of things that happen in the neurology that they can make referrals to, like whether it's the gastric system or those things that they can get things, moving along for the individual. A developmental pediatrician, which are few and far between in our state, and not only in our state, in our country. I do a class for third-year residents at the University of Louisville School of Medicine, and I found out through that program that there are only 18 developmental pediatricians that are practicing in our country, and 2 of them are in Louisville. Behavior supports, there is also an evidence-based factor of looking at the BCBA, which provides those behavior services in the home, sometimes in the clinic, and the mental health professionals. Community living supports, which is a great waiver. I'm going to talk a little bit more about waivers in a minute with the community supports you can get. And then first steps, of course, is from birth to age 3. Respite care, that is something that all families need. Research shows us that 47% of our families sometimes end up in divorce because if they get focused on something, and then in like 3 years, you look at your partner and go, who are you? And so one of the things I work with the families on is that I want you to have date night. But first we got to find who can watch your individual child, And it doesn't have to be, it can be 3 hours, 4 hours, just some time. And I have a couple of rules. One, you can't talk about autism. Two, you can't talk about anything that's stressful. And like if it was with me, I'd probably say financial, but there could be different things that one could be talking about for that. And sometimes the husband will say to me, well, what are we going to talk about? I go, that's why it's date night, because I want you to get to know your partners, because that your child's going to need both parents growing up. And case management, that's a service that you can get through your Michelle P. waiver or through your community mental health centers. So that's something I want to talk a little bit more about. Funding mechanisms. This is where I've got to go into a little more detail. Excuse me just a minute. I laid it over here on the side. Here we go. Excuse me for that. I picked up the wrong packet I was going to talk about. All right, for your community mental health centers, there are four or five waivers I want to talk to you a little bit about, and that is also in your resource file. The Michelle P. waiver. If you have a child that has a diagnosis of developmental delay or autism, you're eligible to apply for the Michelle P. waiver. Unfortunately, there is a huge wait list, but the thing that is important is if you're not on the list, you won't be called for services. And it also gives us information to give to the legislature to let them know that there is such a need for the Michelle P. waiver. Right now, it's somewhere between 7,000 and 8,000 on the wait list. But what you can get through a Michelle P. waiver is case management, which is someone that's kind of like a second set of eyes that you can work with on getting services for your kid, because it's hard to keep everything straight and keep calendars, and you're also trying to run a life and try to work, and I know that so it's kind of helpful to have a case manager. You can get supported employment when they get to the point of like exiting from school and looking at what are the avenues that the individual wants to go, whether it's post-secondary training or is it want to go right to work or get training and then go to work. Attendant care, personal care, like a personal care assistant. Sometimes families will get asked for those. And one of the things that you can get through that would be like in the morning, if you had someone to come in, help you bathe the child, get them dressed, and work with them on those skills. The one thing I also have to tell families when I'm working with them is I'll say, you do know the person probably coming into your home is someone that you don't know. And sometimes you hear the service and you're like, oh my goodness, I love that. But then when you think a little bit further down, I don't know the person. If you do have a problem with that, then that needs to be known, because more than likely you're not going to know that person. Behavior supports, like the respite care, is so important. Looking at assessments and looking at what the kid with cognitive skills, or whether you're looking at the behavior and skills that go with behavior. They also can provide services for adult daycare, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech, and community living supports. So the services that have asterisks on your chart that I put in the resource file is limited to 40 hours a week altogether. So you can get 40 hours a week of those services. And the person that provides the services are SEL workers or community-based waiver approved agencies that can give and hire someone to know someone at the services through a consumer directed operation. How do you apply? The first thing they're going to ask you to do at your community mental health center is they're going to ask you, are you on Medicaid? And they will want you to apply. And if you're not eligible for Medicaid, then that is not an issue. You still can apply for the Michelle P. waiver, but they're wanting to get that extra support in there if they can. And I encourage you, if they say you're eligible for Medicaid, you just say, where do I sign the dotted line? Then you get the Michelle P. wait list. And then there is a number you can call that they'll give you that you can call and see where your child's number is throughout the time. And sometimes I encourage families to more you speak a will, sometimes the better the results are. So call as often as you want, and to find out what your number for your child is. Then you've got the next waiver I will talk about, which is your supports for community living. And this is a waiver that is for an individual that has an IQ of 70 or below. And those are the individuals that are eligible for this waiver. And usually the STL waiver is services to individuals with intellectual disabilities to support them to live with his or her own home or family. So this is a more comprehensive type waiver that will carry you through, housing, through, looking through adult life and those type of situations. So if you're eligible, you please apply for these waivers. Then the one that's the home and community-based waiver. The home and community-based waiver is a waiver that was really originated for senior citizens, but it does also qualify for kids with autism. And it is for the respite care. And so if your child has a physical or a medical disability, then they're eligible to apply for this waiver. The thing about the waivers, you've applied for Medicaid, but you didn't qualify. But now you've applied for a waiver and you are granted a waiver, your child automatically goes on Medicaid, and you're not looking at money factor any further. So that is the nice thing about being able to get a waiver. And the support community living. A lot of times when I speak to classes at the university, I'll ask them, how many of you know a kid that has autism? Well, they're getting a major at that, and they say, well, my neighbor 3 blocks down from us has a child. Well, I encourage them to apply to be supported community living, person that they can do respite care for families, and that they can provide services and learn more about the student as a student before they become a teacher in autism. I'm going to talk about a couple more waivers that you might be eligible for, and they are the if you have acquired brain injury, and then you have that's a waiver that you could get. There's criteria. You have to be age 18 or older to be able to get this waiver. Uh, it is a long wait list. It's also, and that is something that you might need if you find your child has situations that fit that. Who qualifies for a waiver? A home and community-based waiver. You can be age 65 and older to still get that as an adult. For the Michelle P, you have Down syndrome, autism, or any type of intellectual disability. And the supports of community living waiver have an intellectual disability and have a full scale IQ of 70 or below and adaptive of 70 or below. And the services you receive from a waiver vary from different things that your child may have, from supportive behavior supports, community living supports, someone that takes them out in the community, takes them to gives you respite, and then also gives the child interaction within the community of going to a movie or something like that with the community SL worker. I highly encourage students to be able to be with atypical peers as much, or neurotypical peers as much as possible. Because to give you an example, I did a program about 2 or 3 years ago that was a group of psychologists from the Autism Center said, we have some students that can't go to prom because they said they can't dance, or they cannot, or they don't have dates. So I could cry at the drop of a hat, and so my heartstrings was pulled. And this only affected 15 kids, which there are many more kids that this would be effective for. But I wrote a grant to Arts for All Kentucky, which is a statewide inclusionary arts program, which they do everything 50% with kids with challenges, and then 50% with atypical peers. So we do evidence-based research. So I did the dance portion with mobility skills. So I had the occupational therapist to do evaluation of mobility skills before dance and then after dance. And overall outcome was they improved 46.2%. Then we had to find a dance agency that would, after the grant was funded, that would provide the dance. So in my field, as a teacher, a school administrator, I'm not beneath asking or begging to get anything. So I'm always prepared. So I had already prepared my way to convince this dance company that I wanted to have dance for the students. So when I walked in, I started my little spiel, and the dance instructor said, "When do you want to start?" And it almost shot me because I said, "So I don't have to beg you?" And he said, "No, sir, you don't." And so dance, the dance company was wonderful. And so we named the dance portion of the project H4, which was health, happiness, hip hop, health, and happiness. And the one thing that was really encouraging about this, I had 15 students that had autism, and I had 15 students that are atypical. The girls really were the first ones to catch on because the atypical girls were coming in with dance bags with their to change into their clothes. It was like day 2, and my girls that did have autism were bringing in dance bags with their clothes in it. So they were mirroring those behaviors of their atypical peers. Uh, then the dance part. So we worked with the school systems that they attended, and it was like 3 or 4 different school districts. And I know there's rules that you have to go by, so I wanted to make sure we could get approved through it. Because at that time, Spalding University had a very strong Best Buddies program. And so their Best Buddies program, after the school said that they could bring a college student with them, I said, "I'd like for you all to tell me how you think this would best work." I mean, I said, "I can tell you what I think, but I'm a tad bit older than you are, so I know it doesn't look it, but I know that I am." And so, what do you support? So what they came up with was most of the people in the Best Buddies were boyfriend and girlfriend. So they said, "We'll double date." Well, I had a little concern thinking, what if they get to the prom and they kind of ignore the real date? But it was reported back by all principals that that did not occur. He said they may have danced one time or at the most 2 with the person that they really date, you know, but that was not, they dance with the partner that they bring. My guys were awesome because they called each girl to ask them what color, the parents to ask them what color their dress was so they would know what flowers to buy. So I was very impressed with them. So I told them, I said, at midnight, your services in, and then we will look at because the students I'm working with, the 15 with autism, said if it's prom night, you get to stay out till 4 o'clock. I don't know where that rule came from, but I guess I believed them. So we went ahead and we thought, what can we do? So we went bowling after the proms and then came back to our office here and had pizza and Cokes, and they got to rehab their night. And I told the Best Buddies, you're welcome to join us, but your obligations end at midnight. Every one of the Best Buddies came. I was so excited. They really did have a great time. And so, the evaluation piece I did with the boys and the girls to ask what made you just join us after the prom. And the girls had more of a stable reasons of why they did it. My guys, one of the main things that was a common thread with them was I paid for everything. So, but other than that, they still were very polite and they were pure gentlemen working with this program. And so, where do you apply to get on the wait list for the Medicaid waiver? You need to go to your community mental health center. Like in the Jefferson County area, it is 7 counties. In Western Kentucky, I believe that is, I'm gonna go blank. I can put a list out for you on that. I'm sorry, I can't recall right now. I'm going totally blank. Uh, and then once you get the waiver, then you can start looking at providing services, and providers love the waivers because the return rate for them is really, really good. course, the way I look at it, everything should be free because these kids need services. And I would probably be the worst parent because I would probably have, oh, it's Four Rivers. Thank you, someone. Four Rivers Behavioral Health. Uh, that I would not be able to. I would probably, my poor kid would probably have a X on his folder at school saying Dad needs to have a restraint on him, because I would say, like, there's a wait list. Let me have that list. I can whittle it down for you, which is not the way, because I tell families don't burn bridges, because that will only not benefit you, because you're going to probably work with these people for a period of time. Usually things are workable out, work to be able to work out if you have an advocate that is going to work for you. Then you have the Heart Supported Living Grant. This grant is April 1st of each year, and I had several grandparents that I work with that applied for these in April. They haven't heard back yet on the funding yet, but they did really a good job. They went to some workshops with the DD Council, and they also went to some workshops at Bowling Green, Kentucky. They had some workshops in that area because one of my grandparents lived there. And so it is for bigger ticket items. Those bigger ticket items that you have are going to be like, you have a child that elopes. Well, you might need a fence in your backyard. It's very expensive. You can build that into a requested grant to see if the Heart Supported Grant Program will pay for that. And then you have your private insurance. And the biggest problem I see sometimes with private insurance, they provide so many services, but you may need more services than that. So that's the hang up with the private insurance. Strategies are one of the most important things I think of working with autistic students for success. I use these not only in public school from any grade to college, because these are things that you have to be able to acquire. The first one, like syllabus, that is for my higher functioning students that are going to college, and they decide that they get a syllabus. So they're not used to getting a syllabus at college, in public school. So they start learning how to use a syllabus, which tells them what's going to be happening in the class and when the tests are going to be. Looking at breaking up assignments in small segments. Look at structuring classes for kids. That's a big thing. Like, one thing you may see a lot in elementary school, especially, is you'll have a teacher say, all right, we're having reading. And then she'll say, close your books. It's time for math. Well, a kid with autism wants completion. So they may have a meltdown because we'll do math once we finish reading this entire book. So some of the strategies that you can use with that is that you can have like a timer that lights up. Amazon has great cheap ones that you can use at home or at school. And you tell the student, when this lights up, then it's time for math. They know, students with autism love to know the whole story. They want to know what's going to happen from beginning to end. So that's why sometimes I love using a visual schedule with students, because with that visual schedule, you can go over with them in the morning or many times a day you need to, and say, this is what's going to happen throughout our day, when it starts and when it ends. So they know what to expect during the day. Some middle note takers, sometimes that's become a little antiquated because we have a lot of different technologies, devices that will help you with note taking, recordings, audio or video. One of the things that I'm encouraging schools to do that I work with, especially here at the university, is that let's record your lectures. And so I'd like for you to make copies of your lectures on video, and then the student can go back and look at your lectures to study for tests. And then one of the professors said to me, he said, well, this is not good for just kids with autism. This is good for all kids. And I went, bingo. That good instruction is what will make success in any type of child that you're working with. Mentor, I kind of serve as a mentor to these students. I'm not their teacher. I can guide them, and I can give them advice. And we're both all adults, and so we either take my advice or we don't. Counseling is something that I want, especially your older individual, middle school up, to utilize if they need it, because don't keep things held in, because sometimes they'll assume something that's not totally even possible but it's something they assumed in their head. And one of the things that I have to tell people all the time, your child has autism, they're not deaf. So be careful what you say because they may take it out of context. Uh, Housing options, this is more for your older individuals, like with individuals that are going through age 21. A lot of the housing options for them is the student must have a 40-hour week. And that's not a 40-hour work week, but a 40-hour week. And with that, they would be able to pick things that they want or look at things that would be helpful for them. I've got one young lady that I work with that just left high school. And so one of the things that she picked for her week was a walking program at the city park. They had a walking program that she was fortunate to have a Michelle P. waiver that transportation picked her up, took her to, if it was raining, you go to one location. If it's not raining, you go to another. And then they have activities in between the walks, and it lasts like from 8:30 in the morning till 4:30 in the afternoon. And she loves that because she lost 60 pounds. When I first met her, she was 19 years old. She did not have a communication system, and she had pretty severe behaviors. She was 6'2", 250, and when she walked in a room, she could clear several desks and several people. But once we got a communication system, which that was traumatic to me to see that someone 19 years old didn't have a communication system. No, she's non-speaking, but she could use an augmented communication device quicker than I can talk now. And so one of the things that she used it on was we went to an adult daycare program that she was wanting to look at, and I want them to look at it and make sure they like it before they pick it, because that's something that they have to agree to. And so we get in there, and the lady at the adult daycare said, on Fridays, we have hamburgers. She got her device out and she said, I'd rather have pizza. Well, I really didn't know how the person at the adult daycare was going to take that. So I said, is that not awesome that she's advocating for herself? And that's what I want to see kids do, and be able to advocate for. I don't want a hamburger. I want some pizza if we can do that. And the same thing with the housing. Get that 40-hour week and do that. And then if you're not going through the age 21 program, living in a dorm is a good way to learn how to independent live. Or living in apartments. I've got some kids that are not going to college, and they're not didn't go to age 21, but they've got jobs at like a different venues in the state, and they got a roommate, someone that they very close to, but it's housed where that they both have their own privacy, a bathroom, bedroom. Uh, like one of the things when I came to the university, the housing was you had this square room with 2 beds 5 feet apart. Well, that is not even good for atypical, much less individuals with autism. So now we do have different options. You can have you can be eligible for just a private room, but the one option I really like the best that we have is that you can have a room with 3 bedrooms and 3 baths. So you have your own bedroom, your own bath. No one can go in there unless you allow them to. And then they share a living room and a kitchen with 2 atypical peers. So I love that. Testing accommodations. Sometimes with kids with autism, with a processing issue, they should get extended time. So we look at giving extended time, whether it's public school or whether we're in a university setting. Assistive technology has come such a long way, and it's something that we really is good to use. And then lab assistance, if you got a lab, one of the things is of safety. And one of the things that I did here at the university, we had a lab. Labs was becoming a big issue of organizing when they started. So I did a visual schedule after I met with the lab assistants, and we figured out how we could start these labs. And they had 14 steps. And once you finished the 14th step, your lab was ready to start. There was no conversation needed in between for setting up the labs. So you kind of have to be creative sometimes with what you do. Make sure they have supervised study times. Encourage active student life. And it's like, that's the reason I encourage for them to be around all types of individuals, like, atypical peers, individuals that have autism, so that they can have the comfort of knowing who they are. When I come, the university students come here, the first thing they'll say is, I don't have any friends. Well, neither do your atypical students usually when they come here, because they don't know a lot of people either. But by the time you're leaving this university, you have more friends than you probably need. And knock on wood, it has showed true to that. One of the things that I encourage teachers to do is also get them involved with like school clubs that are with their major or something that they're studying in school that they're really good at, or also a social activity. And then also I'd like to see them to have volunteer work. And I know I'm going to get running probably close on time, but the one thing I loved about the students I had this year, one guy who does not like to really be touched, and I don't give them any input on their social schedule for the volunteer work. And he picked Special Olympics as a hugger. And I was, made me smile. And I asked him, I said, well, what made you do that? Because I know you really don't like to be touched. He said, I'm thinking since I don't like this, it will make me a better person. And when he said that, he met all the requirements for that assignment. Visual supports I talked about, visual schedules. Be careful not to use idioms or sarcasm or jokes because they really don't understand them or like them. I have to work with students sometimes as they get older because you may have a boss that wants to tell a joke where you can't tell that joke, that boss, well, that's stupid. So you want to work with them on looking at how you can deal with the situation and not be offensive to anyone. And the major thing is be able to reinforce appropriate behavior, not just always address the behaviors that are not appropriate. Crisis intervention, this is like just an intercede, so I'm not going to go detail on this, but it's like the safety of the child and the others in the room. You may have to move students out of a room in case the child's having a severe behavior reaction, and things that you can do for safety. The main thing is safety. And it's not the point that the child's having a behavior issue, it's more the safety of that child and other children. I know I've gone through this rather quickly today, but here's my contact information. Mike Miller and Mr. Mill 15 at Louisville.edu. Our KTE service email, you will also get to me at katc at Louisville.edu. And we're located at 1405 East Burnett Avenue in Louisville. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mike. Great presentation. I loved hearing your stories about really utilizing these resources and services. The grant idea was amazing and really out of the box. And so thank you for sharing that. I did put the link to today's evaluation in the chat. If you have trouble opening that because of Google firewalls, please try to copy and paste it into another device, write it down. I'm going to put my email in the chat in case you guys need me to send the evaluation to you, or the PowerPoint and resources link that was also in the chat. I see that Heidi put a link to search for all the different community mental health centers in all the different regions. And I did want to put out that Salem also had a comment that as an autistic adult, I can also confirm that I love having the whole schedule and all the information. It makes me less anxious and I can handle transitions easier.
Awesome.
I don't know if anybody else has any other questions for Mike. They can please put those in the chat since we do have a few minutes. And Salem also said,
Thank you for watching this video. Please take a moment to complete this short feedback form by scanning the QR code or typing the URL into your web browser. Thank you.